Falcons Commanders got flex, but who's going to be starting at quarterback for the Falcons when we get to Sunday Night Football?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. So if you do not know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. Mr. Drew, a.k.a. the iron that sharpens the iron, a.k.a. Mr. a.k.a. And I've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for 18 years. Formerly at FalcFans.com, RIP, still going strong on this illustrious podcast. I thank each and every one of you that goes strong with me as everydayers. That means you make this podcast your first listen or first watch each and every day. And all you got to do to become a everydayer is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. So today's episode, we will talk a little bit about the Raiders game. And we'll talk about it tomorrow, probably whenever we get to the All-22. But let's talk about, the state of the franchise, right? But first, we'll start off talking about the news of the day. Good news, bad news, depending on your perspective. I think for most of us, it's probably bad news. But the NFL announced on Tuesday that they are flexing the upcoming Week 17 matchup between the Atlanta Falcons and Washington Commanders to Sunday Night Football. That's replacing the Browns-Dolphins game. We talked about this earlier in the week on Sunday evening on YouTube, Monday morning on your normal audio platforms about this possibility existing. We, sort of caveated, I think the Falcons, it's not automatic. If the Falcons win this game against the Raiders, they're going to have to actually play well in order to justify getting that sort of spotlight in that Commanders game. And the NFL was like, no, they don't have to play well. We'll give it to them. So we'll get either one more chance to be embarrassed or inspired by a Falcons performance on national television. What could go wrong? So that's why I say it's either good news or bad news, depending on what side of that spectrum you fall on. So, that game will have playoff implications, potentially decide the 7th seed, right? If the Falcons win this week against the Giants, not a given. If Philadelphia beats Washington, which is not a given, that winner of that Week 17 game, that head-to-head matchup between the Falcons and Commanders, that team is going to potentially, again, it will still depend on what happens in Week 18, but should those two teams, Atlanta and Washington, finish the season with the same record, the winner of that Week 17 game, will hold the tiebreaker and potentially get in. Seattle and how the NFC West shakes out also is a factor in it, but, we'll cross that bridge. We'll get into more playoff scenarios as the week wears on. But, the question to me, and I think the question a lot of you are having is, who's going to be starting that game, Kirk Cousins or Michael Penix? And at this point, kind of feels like a toss-up because Raheem Morris, was non-committal Tuesday, talking about who was going to start this week against the Giants, and basically indicated, when the media asked him that question, he was like, we just got back. We're still going through that process. But we've known over these last couple of weeks, and it's diminished. We've got diminishing returns on it. It's progressively Raheem's enthusiastic endorsements of Kirk Cousins as this is definitely our guy. He's getting progressively less enthusiastic about those commitments and endorsements of Kirk Cousins. And today we'll see, right? So we seem to be trending in that direction for Kirk Cousins to no longer be the Atlanta Falcons starting quarterback. And will that be the case by the time we get to Sunday Night Football? We'll see. I still am expecting Kirk to start against the Giants. We'll find out tomorrow on Wednesday, officially, in all likelihood. And as I said last night, if the Falcons offense is going to be as conservative and as scared, as the kids say, as they were in the second half against that Raiders team, where they kind of reverted back to what I called a 1990s high school offense, where it was run, pass, and they basically had a 90-10 run-pass ratio on early downs in the second half of that game. If that's what your offense is going to be, that's the offense that you would run with a rookie quarterback. As I said, that's the offense you would run with a third-string practice squad quarterback that's only been on the team for a week. At that point in time, you might as well turn to Michael Penix. And again, I want to make it clear, guys, it's not because or at least I, We is different. Y'all are different. But I here, and again, I have the microphone, so you have to listen to the words I say. But it's not because I believe that, hey, if they insert Michael Penix into the lineup, the offense is going to magically get fixed, right? And the play caller has lost all confidence in the quarterback. And to me, the case for Penix starting is not because he's going to make the offense better. The case for Penix is, well, if we're losing with Kirk, might as well lose with Michael Penix. There's no point, we're paying Kirk all this money to win games, and he's not winning games. So might as well toss the keys to Michael Penix and see what he can do. And while the Falcons did not lose on Monday Night Football, they probably deserved to, given how terrible their play calling was on offense in the second half and how terrible their play calling was on defense in the fourth quarter. Go listen to yesterday's Rapid Reaction for more on that. But, we'll see. You don't often see a quarterback benched after a win. We spent the last couple of weeks on this podcast saying, this upcoming game, that might be Kirk's last chance. And it's like, this week we're saying this upcoming game, this might be Kirk's last chance. So we'll see. We'll see. But, if Kirk is the starting quarterback, they got to figure something out, on a relatively short week. If they do roll with Penix, they'll have the benefit of playing at home. It is a shorter week, though. So that is a factor against it. But they are playing at home against a Giants team that, like the Raiders, is vying to be the team that has the number one pick and presumably will take either Shedeur Sanders of Colorado or, Cam Ward of Miami at this point in time. So, this is the kind of game that if you want to get Penix, if it's time to move on from Kirk Cousins, and maybe we are there, I'm sure many of you are like, we're definitely there, Aaron. Again, I'm still in denial. I'll explain why on today's episode. But, this is the kind of game that you kind of want to get his feet wet before you throw him to the wolves, so to speak, in a quote-unquote playoff game against Washington, right? This Giants game, get his feet wet, win a very winnable game, again, because you're playing a bad team. Whether they're a worse team than the Atlanta Falcons, again, we'll find out on Sunday. But, you're playing another bad team. And then, you got your playoff game against Washington. But again, I don't go into that game. I don't go into any of these games being like, oh, yeah, Penix. He's going to solve their problems. But if they do stick with Kirk, I'll understand it, whether I agree with it or not. Again, we'll see what the film says. But, I am not someone who thinks Kirk is washed. That's basically what I'm saying. And he's doing his best to prove me wrong these last couple of weeks. But I still think he's one of the 20 to 25 best quarterbacks in the NFL. I wanted to rank him higher, but then I actually looked at like the other 20 quarterbacks and I'm like, yeah, I don't know if he's in the top 20. I don't think this offense is really doing a great job showcasing that ability that I believe is, deep down. We just got to dig deep down to get it out of Kirk. And I'm sure some of you guys like 20 to 25, Aaron, really? Like he's the 12th highest paid quarterback in the NFL. That's not what we paid for. And it's like, well, actually, excuse me, sir, that if you adjust it for a salary cap percentage and inflation, he's actually more like the 15th highest paid quarterback in the NFL. So that's not true. But, either way, not getting quite the return on your investment. Now, earlier this season, we were getting a pretty decent return on that investment. And then something seemingly broke after that Saints game. And now we find ourselves trying to fix what is broken. And that gets to why Kirk and this coaching staff is going to have to show me something over these next 3 games to finish out this season, or essentially all else is lost. And we'll get into that as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. So continuing tackling the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is going to give you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place, so we can get that hunch in the middle of the game. You can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the very same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And this week, the Falcons are favored by 9.5 points against the New York Giants. FanDuel definitely wants people to put money on the Giants this week, but they covered the 5.5 point spread against the Raiders on Monday night, so maybe they'll get, they'll win this game by 10 points. Maybe, who knows? We'll feel better, I guess. Yeah. So, if you want to make that your first $5 bet, go ahead. Or you want to bet on the college football playoff that's coming up this weekend as well. All you have to do is head on over to fanduel.com and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And it is that time of year. The college football playoff is back. And with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the SMU, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs, battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. And then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate, live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Show me what you've got. So I need Kirk, I need Raheem, I need Zach to show me something. One of these three guys got to step up so I can sit there and say, going into this offseason, that guy's a keeper. That guy's a keeper. Not saying, they need to clean house or anything, but I want to believe in at least one of these three guys. Because right now, my faith in these guys, all three of these guys, is at an all-time low. Right? So someone's got to show me something. Show me that you're worth a damn. And that's with the frustration on Monday Night Football, right? And I've only dipped my toe in the film so far. We'll get into the all 22 before the crossover Thursday with Locked On Giants later this week. But, as I said with Kirk, I think Kirk is still capable of playing good football. We're just not seeing it. And I think a lot of that has to do with the system that he's running. Again, more on that a little bit later. We'll get to the Zac Robinson portion of today's episode. But it goes back to something you heard me talk about for a month and back in February. And the reason why we signed Kirk Cousins, right? Now, the myth behind why the Falcons signed Kirk Cousins, and for all of those people, and this is what you've heard me bring this up a number of times on the podcast over the last couple of weeks, is all the people that were drinking the Kool-Aid, right? Buying the hype, right? When it came to signing Kirk Cousins and believing that the reason behind the signing Kirk Cousins, because he was going to transform this team instantly into a contender in the NFC. Now, if you listen to Locked On Falcons from, I believe, February 11th episode, right after the Super Bowl, to March 11th episode when the Falcons officially signed Kirk Cousins, we spent basically that entire month talking about all the reasons why I believed, right? The context clues were telling me that Kirk Cousins was probably going to be the Falcons' preferred quarterback option this offseason. And it wasn't because he was going to transform this team into contender. You can check the tape, guys. We did like 28 episodes or 22 episodes or whatever across that month. And probably 19 of them were talking about Kirk Cousins in some form or fashion. And never once did I say, they're going to be a contender. Kirk Cousins is going to transform this team, right? The reason why we talked about the Falcons going after Kirk Cousins was for stability, stabilizing the quarterback position, being that grown up in the room, finding out if your weapons, right? This great assemblage of talent that the Falcons allegedly have. More on that later. Are these guys actually good? Because that's been the problem the last 2 years is you have Drake London, you have Kyle Pitts, and a big reason you don't know how good these guys are, despite their billing as high in picks. Bijan Robinson also could be thrown in the mix, is because you've had so much up and down quarterback play. Now, unfortunately, we've still gotten too much up and down quarterback play, but at least through the first half of the season, Kirk did provide some of that stability. But Kirk was never the guy the final piece to the puzzle to turn yourself into a contender, right? People convinced themselves somehow drinking that Kool-Aid that, they drink the Kool-Aid and their vision got a little blurry and they were squinting at Kirk Cousins. They're like, man, I think I see Tom Brady. I think I see Peyton Manning. I think I see Matt Stafford as those quarterbacks that joined teams and transformed them into Super Bowl contenders. Right? Kirk on that spectrum with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and Matt Stafford are somewhere on this end of the spectrum. Kirk was much closer to the opposite end of the spectrum of the teams that thought they were getting that guy in Derek Carr and Matt Ryan in Indianapolis, Russell Wilson in Denver. And now we see Aaron Rodgers in New York can be added to that list. That's the end of the spectrum that Kirk was expected to be on, right? That's why I sat here all offseason disgruntled, guys, with the complacency that this team had, because it was basically all we need is Kirk. All you need is Kirk, right? Sounds like a song lyric from the 70s, right? And I'm like, if all you think all you need is Kirk, like, have you guys watched Kirk Cousins? Like, the chaos meter exists for a reason. not just because Luke Braun is a hater. Like, it exists for a reason, guys. Like, I don't think Kirk Cousins is the player that y'all think he is, right? And so, for the last 5 games, Kirk Cousins is not even the player that I thought he was, right? Right? And I don't think it's been all bad for Kirk during that span, but it certainly has not been good for Kirk during that span. And my hope was always with Kirk Cousins was, you get through the ups and downs of the first year, and then you can kind of smooth out some of those rough edges in year 2. You're going to get the better version of Kirk, because we've seen historically Kirk in year 2 with the same play caller, he's better. Similar to what we saw with Matt Ryan when he had his success, his ups and downs with a brand new play caller in his first year, Kyle Shanahan being the most famous one, right? Rough year 1, better year 2. Now, obviously, Matt Ryan had a MVP caliber season in year 2 under Kyle Shanahan. Didn't have those expectations for Kirk Cousins, although, sometimes you lay your head down at night and you dream about things and you have pleasant dreams. You're like, Kirk Cousins, MVP? Oh, okay. But never thought that was a realistic expectation. But it was just like, okay, you round off the edges, and, not to say that you suddenly morph into a Super Bowl team in 2025 in that year 2 of Kirk, but maybe you might get Kirk his second playoff win at that point in time, if you're lucky. Maybe you get the second one in year 1, and then you get the third one in year 2. Who knows? Right? So that, it is what it is. And then you toss the keys to Michael Penix, and he catches it with his left hand, as he does. And you've set him up for success, right? In the same way that you've seen arguably the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL right now that were similarly set up for similar levels of success, right? We're talking about Patrick Mahomes. We're talking about Josh Allen. We're talking about Lamar Jackson. Like, these guys are the Nepo babies, the football equivalent of Nepo babies. Like, these guys didn't go join the Chiefs and the Bills and the Ravens, and they were bad football teams, right? The Bills, debatable, certainly. But they had ended their 20-year playoff drought the previous year under Tyrod Taylor before drafting Josh Allen. But Patrick Mahomes joined a team that had been on the playoffs 6 years in a row or something like that, 4 years in a row, right? Lamar Jackson, I know the Ravens were in a dip, but the Ravens dip is like a 9-7 season, right? A down year for the Baltimore Ravens is like 8-8 and 9-7. And they basically, I don't think they might have had 1 or 2 losing seasons in 20 years. Right? We mythologize these guys as they just sort of put these teams on their back and carried them to be contenders. No, these guys are Nepo babies, guys. The football equivalent of Nepo babies, right? They didn't start out on 3-win teams and carried them to the finish line. They started out on second base or third base or whatever and carried them home. And that was, to me, the goal with Michael Penix. Why, I don't sit here wanting to rush Michael Penix, right? That if and when Michael Penix does take over, he's not starting from scratch. He's starting out on second base or third base or whatever. Because I don't think him or this team is as far as long as you want them to be. We keep telling ourselves that, he's so set up for success because look at the talent that we have and whatnot. And it's just their talent level is overrated, man. I heard it on the broadcast last night where they're like, oh, look at the talent. Yeah, compared to the Raiders, sure. Compared to the Raiders, yeah, our talent is loaded. But there's nothing special about this team by NFL standards. And again, I don't say that guy to be a hater and say they suck. But there's nothing special about this team. I've watched them every single week, the film of this team for 12 plus years. This is now year 13 of me watching the All-22. And it's people talk about this team from a talent standpoint, right? We talked about this last week on the podcast where a good buddy of mine back in August was like, this is one of the 5 or 6 best rosters in football. I'm like, what are you guys on? Y'all talk about this team, y'all, not me, because I'm a hater. But y'all talk about this team teams are getting off the bus being like, the Falcons are getting off the bus. Oh my God, we're so scared. Look how loaded this roster is. It's like Bijan's the only guy on this team that's like that. Everybody else is good. Don't get me wrong, guys. But Bijan's the one guy that's actually scary. Don't be scared, right? Don't be scared. Right? You're like, oh, I'm worried about that. There's one guy on the team that's like that. One, maybe Jesse Bates. You want to throw him in there. But when people talk about this team from the talent, that's where my beef is. It's they're a talented team, but by NFL standards, they're okay. But we won't go into that rant today. So to me, it was really the mission of this quarterback. It was the mission of this coaching staff to elevate the talent that is not special, that take this collection of unspecial players and make them a consistently, and again, not necessarily special, but good team. that can win week in and week out. And we stopped getting that elevation, air quotes, elevation from the quarterback 5 weeks ago. But I don't think it's all on the quarterback because he's Kirk Cousins, right? And the Netflix got everybody tripping about, what Kirk Cousins is. The Netflix show, quarterback. And people were like, oh, Kirk Cousins is actually really good. And it's like, Kirk Cousins, man. Right? You need more than Kirk Cousins, right? That's, I don't know, man. You just look what the Vikings did to us last week, right, guys? Their talent level. And that team wasn't a Super Bowl contender with Kirk Cousins. They're better than us, but hey, that you didn't hear that from me. So let's talk about this coaching staff and whether or not they have delivered on the expectations of elevation so far this season. And we'll do that to wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. And whether it's, football, basketball, whatever sport you're into, Prize Picks is going to make it easy and make it exciting to play daily fantasy for those sports, right? And Prize Picks is here during this holiday season to make the holidays bigger and brighter. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas, and they're offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, man, Prize Picks is going to make it easy to cash out and get your money as quick as 15 minutes. And so part of my frustration with this team is, my moneymaker, the illustrious Darnell Mooney, laid a goose egg on Monday night. And I've been hammering the more on Prize Picks on his stat projections all year long. It's the one positive I can definitely say about Zac Robinson, right? And now Zach and Darnell Mooney, they're dipping into my pockets. And is Darnell going to rebound against the New York Giants? More or less, 63.5 receiving yards? Find out. Take the projections, whether you feel good about the Falcons or feel bad about the Falcons. That's the beauty of it. If you feel great, hammer them more. If you feel bad, take them for less. And all you got to do is download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even have to win. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Now, guys, you guys know that Locked On has been very good to me these past few years, and I got a little bit more money in my pocket. I'm trying to be a little smarter with my money, not just making it rain everywhere. Don't want to be frivolous with my spending. And this is why I got Rocket Money to help monitor my spending, right? Rocket Money is a personal finance app that's going to help find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and help lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even your goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when you use all of the app's premium features. Canceling subscriptions is the big selling point for Rocket Money, and you quickly find out. That's where that $740 figure comes out, because you find out, do I need this? $5 here, $8 here, $12 here, $20 here, right? It all adds up, to $740. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. So you guys know me. I love me some Raheem. He can talk the talk. Walking the walk is the hard part, right? That was my issue with the complacency, right? That Raheem basically was talking that talk, and it's like, I got this. I'm going to take Arthur Smith's players. I'm going to elevate these players. 75% retention rate on offense and defense, right? If you look at the top 16 guys in terms of snap counts, there's 4 new faces on either side of the ball. Kirk Cousins, Darnell Mooney, Charlie Warner, Ray McCloud. On defense, it's Justin Simmons, Matthew Judon, James Smith-Williams, and Eddie Goldman. You take offense, defense, special teams. You take all the players that have played at least 200 snaps at this point in the season in all 3 phases, or at least in one of those 3 phases. As a total of 38 players, 9 new faces. The 8 I just mentioned, plus JD Bertrand, 200+ snaps on special teams. So again, 75% retention rate. That's about 24%. So that's where that percentage comes. And, Terry Fontenot has been one of the biggest lightning rods for criticism. And basically Raheem talking that talk was like, Terry's built a playoff team. He's 75% of the way there. We'll add the last 25% to get them over the hump, but I got this, right? And before Monday night against the Raiders, I didn't think Raheem was that far off the mark. Right now, the margins was getting very close and getting razor thin by the end as we were in this downward spiral. But I thought we would still get there, right? They get to 9 or 10 wins at the end of the season. And even if it's a disappointing 9 or 10 win season, 9 and 8 or 10 and 7, it still would be better than what his predecessors did. And so even though, I don't feel like Raheem set himself up for success by talking that talk, he did, even if he stumbled a little bit, did maybe walk the walk. That was what my expectations. But now after Monday night, it's like, I don't know anymore. I still think the Falcons will finish the season with at least 9, if not 10 wins. But it's, my faith in that is at an all-time low. And so Raheem, just like Kirk Cousins, has got to show me something. This team over these last 3 games is going to have to circle the wagons. And Raheem, as the head coach who's responsible for the product on the field, he's going to have to get this team playing better. Now, the defense, if you just, squint and ignore all the Jordan Addison highlights over the last week, and that one terrible rep from D. Alford that should be memed to death against Justin Jefferson, the defense has been playing better, right? The Falcons have, I think I saw the stat today on Tuesday, the NFL's best pass rush if you just only look at the last 3 weeks of the season. And because the defense is Raheem's area of expertise and, him and Jimmy Lake have seemed to mostly gotten that thing rectified. Again, if you just ignore the Jordan Addison and you ignore the last 2 drives in that Monday night game, again, we got to caveat this, guys. But again, it's the Falcons defense. Beggars can't be choosers. We got to take what we can get. And so part of me is like, okay, that's Raheem's area of expertise. So thumbs up, right? Raheem's doing what he's expected to do. And it's kind of like, well, because he's not an offensive coach, he has experience coaching offense, but like that's not his background. So does he kind of deserve a pass for the ongoing offensive struggles? To a certain extent, maybe a slight pass, it's hard to hammer him that hard for that. But it is hard to give him that pass, given the black cloud over the quarterback situation that hangs over this football team right now. And ultimately who the quarterback is his decision. And, the overwhelming majority of people out there on the planet seem to think that the decision that he has made so far these last couple of weeks of sticking with Kirk Cousins, and again, we'll find out tomorrow if, he continues to make that decision, is that the right move? A lot of people questioning that. And so, again, he talked that talk all offseason as if the quarterback situation was all solved, right? The decision to pay Kirk Cousins, the decision to draft Michael Penix in the top 10, we talked about it a bunch. Unprecedented and unorthodox. But Raheem was like, don't worry, I got this. It's like, do you, my guy? Do you? But that gets us to the Zac Robinson of it all. And Monday night was, to me, the second Bruno game. And we don't talk about Bruno. And the first Bruno game was that week 1 game. And for those of you that are new here, the reason why we don't talk about that game is because of the terrible TJ Watt game plan that they had a layup of a game plan of, hey, Sean McVay, coaching staff that you, Zac Robinson, and Raheem Morris were part of last year with the Rams, were able to neutralize TJ Watt and hand him his worst pass rushing game in like 5 years by just chipping him. And then the Falcons were like, should we go with a plan that actually works, or should we go with the opposite plan that doesn't work? And the Falcons are like, we're doubling down on the plan that doesn't work. And so that was a big red flag. The other big red flag was 0 play action calls. And it's like, we're doing this in 2024? Like the amount of play action run in the NFL over the last 8 years is like basically doubled. Like in 2016, when Matt Ryan won the MVP, he led the league in play action plays, I think like 25%. Nowadays, I think the league average is roughly about 25. I think it's maybe exactly like 23%. That's the league average now. That used to lead the NFL. And Zac Robinson is like, you know what? Everybody's zigging by running more play action. I'm going to zag by running none. So that's why we call that a Bruno game, because it's like, this is terrible. This is terrible. And then last night, when we look at the second half play calling, it's like, okay, I think I'm starting to understand why you don't believe in play action, because they can't run play action. They tried it 3 times in that game. They couldn't block it any of the times. It's like, do they even know how to run play action? And it's like, ooh, that's a serious red flag. Again, Kirk's going to get all the blame for that. He's going to get all the heat for that. But I'm just like, I don't think it's a Kirk Cousins problem. I'm starting to think it's a Zac Robinson problem. I've been thinking it since the bye week. But, hey, we're going to plug in Penix. He's the Lisan Al-Gaib. He's Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, right? The savior. He's going to walk on water and magically he's going to fix this pass attack, right? Right? Zac has just been holding back all the great play action concepts all along because Kirk can't run it, right? That's what's going to happen, right? Now, when you say it out loud, it doesn't really pass the smell test. But again, we'll see. We'll see. But the reason why I give Zac Robinson so much grief on this podcast, it goes back to what I talked about in the offseason, that this offseason wasn't a bet on Kirk Cousins, right? That's not Tom Brady that the Falcons are signing. We have a decade to know what Kirk is and what Kirk isn't, and he's not Tom Brady. The bet that the Falcons were really making was on Zac Robinson, that he was going to be the next in the lineage in the Shanahan-McVay tree, like Zach Taylor and Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, et cetera. And that him alongside a veteran quarterback, the grown-up Kirk Cousins, we're going to take all these pieces they inherited from Arthur Smith and turn it into one of the better offenses in the NFL. And we get an above-average offense in year one, and then potentially in year two, we get that top 10 offense that really, that's where the magic could happen, right? We likened it to the quarterback tiers that The Athletic puts out every year, right? What tier of play caller is Zac Robinson, right? We were hoping for tier 2, right? Tier 2 defined as can carry, when talking about quarterbacks, can carry his team sometimes, but not consistently, can handle pure passing situations and doses and or possesses the other dimensions that are special enough to elevate above tier 3, has a hole or two in his game. And so that perfectly describes how we think about play callers too. Tier 3, legit starter, but needs a heavier run game and or defensive counterpart to win. Lower volume drop back passing offense suits him best. And so for me, talking about Zac Robinson predecessors, Arthur Smith, Dirk Cutter, and Steve Sarkisian, those guys were all firmly in tier 3 to me. And we were hoping that Zac Robinson would be tier 2. And have the first time we had someone above tier 3 since Kyle Shanahan, who was a tier 1 play caller. Now, it was never fair and realistic to expect Zac Robinson to be on Kyle Shanahan's level, but I didn't feel like Zac tier 2 was an unrealistic expectation given Zac's background and lineage. And we've gotten doses of it. Right? When it comes to the Falcons defense, but currently it's not living up to the bill. And that's why I've been so critical, because now I feel like I'm the one that gaslit themselves. I was the one drinking too much of that Zac Robinson Kool-Aid, taking a couple of sips here or there. So that's where my expectations got the better of me for guys. But I don't criticize Zac Robinson because I think he's incompetent. I think the offense has been mostly good this year, right? They're currently in 15th in DVOA and in EPA per play on offense, but they've been trending downward fast. And I sit here and I go, how many good offensive coordinators, I should say, that we say that guy's good, and they have a Bruno game on their resume and arguably 2 Bruno games now on their resume. I don't think there's many. So that's where I'm at with Kirk and Raheem and Zac. It's show me what you've got. Change the narrative over these last 3 weeks. I don't need the Falcons to be dominant down the stretch. Winning games, fine, but I shouldn't walk away from a win like I did last night against the Raiders, who are, the front runner to have the number 1 pick, thinking that you didn't deserve to win that game. And so you face one of the 2 worst teams in football last week. You're going to face one of the other one this week against the Giants. Again, don't need you to blow them out, but just show me that you can put together a coherent, competent game plan and execute that game plan. And I'll feel like, okay, you showed me something. That's all I'm asking, guys. Like, the standard isn't that high for the Falcons. Just show competency. And we haven't seen that in a while. And so I need it from Kirk. I need it from Raheem. I need it from Zac. Or else it's going to be a long offseason. I'll just say that. It's going to be a long offseason. If we don't get it from at least one of those guys are going to be like, well, that guy is doing what he's supposed to be doing. And so we just got to figure out what the other 2 guys are doing. I just need one of you to show up. That's all I'm asking for. So there's where I'm at. We'll be back with an all 22 review, your next episode, looking at the film, talking about the pass rush, probably talking about why the offense didn't work, all that and more. You can understand why I'm procrastinating watching the film. And I know many of you are like, Aaron, you can skip the all 22 review this week. I'm like, no, guys, I have to do it. Got to do it. And then we'll get to the crossover Thursday with Locked On Giants. It's all in store for you. Continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen. Check us out on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And check out Locked On NFL. Talk about, actually good football teams for once. And what's going on with the other 31 teams around the NFL. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.